Personal development's quite a broad topic. There's so much information out there as to you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And you really need to find what works for you personally. When we put this journal together, we sat down and we thought, what's important to us and how can other people relate? So in the journal, there's a breakdown at the start of the journal as to how to use it and how to use the specific framework that we've provided in it. Where do you start with personal development if you've got no framework? It's like you just start with a blank piece of paper and a pen. That's it for them. But for me, and I know Mitchell as well, because we worked on it together, we wanted something that had sort of some cues as to people so they can, for the people so they can journal.
I think the things that gave me growth during that period when I was trying to essentially rebuild myself was gratitude was definitely one, organization, and probably reflection. Those sort of three areas I find are kind of like the pillars for what we do with the Key Journal. So you'll find that even now in our updated journal, there's your gratitude practices, there's the daily self-reflection. We even have a weekly self-reflection as well. So Nick mentioned, but putting things into this journal that we needed and wanted at the time. Like, it kind of sounds selfish, but it was like, if we want this to work for other people, it's got to also work for us.
All right, we have a bit of a different episode today. Briggsy's actually taking a back seat for us, mate.
You're not about time.
Not in the passenger seat anymore.
I've been booted. I listened to the last couple episodes and I said, you've just got to get off.
I'm driving full stick today, so Jaden's in charge. We're very lucky. There's actually 3 of us here, not 2 of us. We have a very special guest, Mr. Nicholas Newman. Welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you, Jaden.
Nicholas.
Thank you, Mitchell, for having me.
I like that, Nicholas. Nicholas. Nick is joining us here, and Briggsy is joining us not so much as a Hybrid HQ coach, but as the team from the Key Journal. Now, boys, I want to dive into this, what you're doing with the Key Journal. It's absolutely amazing. But a lot of people who don't know what you guys are doing, what the Key Journal is, what you're about. Can you guys dive into a little bit more of who you are, how you guys met, and everything about the Key Journal and what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, I was excited to get stuck into this episode because there's a few people in the gym that have asked about the business. So that is with Nick, and it's the Key Journal, and it's essentially a self-development program that we run primarily in the NDIS space at the moment. But I'm going to throw it over to Nick to get things started here, and he can give you a little backstory on himself and sort of how we got started together.
Yeah, so I think it was prior to the first wave of COVID, Mitchell and I met at a Bridge the Gap men's catch-up down in Terrigal, and I'd spent the previous 12 months overseas in the UK, and anyone who's fortunate enough to spend some time through the European summer always says it's a great time, but there's another side of that, and that's winter. And for me, coming from an Australian summer and just living in Australia my whole life and spending those 12 months overseas certainly made me dive into gratitude practices. Essentially, is what helped me stay over there for those 12 months. I dove really deeply into personal development, and when I came back into Australia and I met Mitch, I shared that story with him and had in mind to put together a bit of a journal for myself because I couldn't find anything in the market that had all this sort of framework as what I wanted in a journal to continue my personal development journey. And then when I shared that story with Mitchell, he had another journal idea in mind, and that was more down the fitness realm. So did you want to touch on that while you're at it?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's where Nick and I first crossed paths. And I think we gelled pretty quickly, pretty early on. We definitely had similarities around looking after our physical health. The personal development side for me came in at that point big time as well. That was probably my first real exposure to, I guess, a traumatic experience and, not being in a very good headspace for a period of time. And the thing that really got me out of that was then personal development. So journaling was a massive part of that. So it kind of aligned like quite beautifully, really, where Nick had this idea, I had this idea, and we sort of combined it into the one. And like Nick said, initially we had 2 journals. One was our, I guess what we're known for, which is the Key Journal. That's all the self-development practices. And then we designed a fitness journal as well. A fairly basic layout, but a really good introductory, starting point for people learning to track their weights and their exercises, and essentially inputting their own program into this journal.
Love it, boys. Absolutely love it. Now I've gone over the journal. I've used the journal for months now as well. What I did want to dive into is you both briefly touched on there in terms of like facing your own challenges and things like that. Are there any sort of specific challenges that you guys faced or had to overcome that actually like led you to designing the journal the way it is now? Because obviously, like, when you look at the market, there's different journals out there. There's gratitude journals and things like that. But what you guys have done you've made it very specific. And even now, which I'll let you guys touch on, you've even upgraded the journal from what you've previously done and added more things in. So it's very specific in how you've designed this. Those ideas, was there certain challenges or things that you guys had to overcome that actually helped with the design of this journal? Because like what you said, Nick, you touched on that there wasn't really anything in the market that you were looking for. So what were the specific kind of challenges that you had to face?
I'm sure Mitchell can relate. Personal development's quite a broad topic. There's so much information out there, information overload, as to you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And you really need to find what works for you personally to be able to implement it daily. And it comes down to discipline. And when we put this journal together, we sat down and we thought, what's important to us and how can other people relate? So in the journal, there's a breakdown at the start of the journal as to how to use it and how to use the specific framework that we've provided in it. And I think that's important because where do you start with personal development if you've got no framework? It's like you just start with a blank piece of paper and a pen. Like, how do you expect someone to write their thoughts? And don't get me wrong, some people, that's it for them. But for me, and I know Mitchell as well, because we worked on it together, we wanted something that had sort of some cues as to people so they can, for the people so they can journal.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think for me, there's a few common themes that we had in the first journal that we still continue to have in our updated one, which we'll get to. But I think the things that gave me growth during that period when I was trying to essentially rebuild myself was gratitude was definitely one, organization, and probably reflection. Those sort of three areas I find are kind of like the pillars for what we do with the Key Journal. So you'll find that even now in our updated journal, there's your gratitude practices, there's the daily self-reflection. We even have a weekly self-reflection as well. So yeah, I think Nick mentioned, but putting things into this journal that we needed and wanted at the time. Like, it kind of sounds selfish, but it was like, if we want this to work for other people, it's got to also work for us. So
I think the biggest thing what you guys have done is you've exactly what you just touched on, Nick, in terms of like personal development. You've really like displayed and mapped out actionable steps that people can take in order to do it. So like you always hear people talk about personal development, right? But like you said, Nick, it's such a broad space, and it's like, where do you even start? That the journal essentially and even the updated one's even better with that now, is it takes people from the very start, wherever they are in their life, and essentially just drives them through that whole process. Which is amazing, because I think that's the difference with the Key Journal is a lot of journals are there, but they're not actually, people don't really know how to use them properly. There's no actionable steps. It's here's a journal, but from then on, it's whatever you want to do with it kind of thing. You guys have actually incorporated and implemented actionable steps and like weekly progress for individuals to use, which I think is the key difference, right? Key Journal, key difference.
Nice, I like that. Yeah, you're right, man, 100%. Like, and I think even before we get to that, I think like understanding the trajectory of where we've started to now is like super important just for context. But when we first started to really help other people with the journal, initially we were selling them. So sort of e-commerce, selling them online, different gyms and stuff like that. Then we got an opportunity with both Gosford and Wyong mental health wards, and that was through actually a client I was training at the time, and she was the manager up at both of the wards, and she kind of saw what we were doing and was like, I think you could run something cool up at the ward. So we took on, what was it, 40 weeks?
Yeah, about 40 weeks.
Yeah, 40 weeks up there, running similar to what we do now, but probably not as targeted.
Not as detailed.
Yeah, not as detailed.
Specific to what we're working to now.
Definitely. So we did like a little bit of movement together out in the courtyard of the ward with the patients. And then we also did like group journaling. Do you want to give them a sort of heads up as to where we went from that?
Yeah, so those 40 weeks passed, and unfortunately the funding was exhausted for us to continue on in those wards. And we had a specific individual that we work with in those wards through that time, and he had just been discharged from the hospital, and he had an NDIS plan put together, and essentially it's up to him to decide what he wants to do with that funding. And he asked Mitchell and myself, would we continue to work with him, but on a one-on-one level? And we sort of looked at each other and went, yeah, let's do it. It's important for this individual. He wants us to be a part of his life, and like, why not? So from there, we built out what we work on now, which is 4 phases through a 12-month program of continuous self-development. And we still work with this one individual now, and that's 3 years on. So amazing. It just shows how much value is in the program and how it can be recycled, because people's lives change day to day, let alone every 12 to 18 months. So
for sure. I think there's so much power in, like the time that we actually took to construct what we ultimately have now. Like, it was week on week where we were seeing different themes that were working for this individual, things that probably weren't working that well. So like, we actually took the good part of over 2 years to see, okay, this is working well, this goes in the program.
Yeah, for sure.
This part doesn't, we're going to leave that out. So, and that's why we're having great results now, is when new clients coming on board, like, it is very intentional, but like, it's also proven that it works.
For sure. You're obviously getting incredible growth at the moment, seeing you guys work with the people you're working now, and it's obviously growing. It's becoming quite successful, which is amazing because you're changing people's lives. What I do want to do, can you dive into the program in itself in terms of what you actually offer? So people listening, they probably think they hear a journal and they go, okay, well, journaling's journaling, but what you guys offer, it's a full holistic program. So what you said, you've integrated exercise into it as well, and you've got phases within these journals. Can you dive into the actual program that the Key Journal offers itself, what space you're working in now, and the actual trajectory of what you guys are looking to do with it moving forward?
I'm ready to get.
Yeah. I'll try him when I need to.
So this sounds broad, but essentially we're a personal development program that's designed to help people unlock their true potential. So the way that we do that tangibly is a 2-hour session with the individual each week. There's 2 main areas within that session. The first hour is going to be dedicated to the program itself, the journaling itself, and then the second hour is focused around some form of movement. So Nick and I are massive believers in the interconnectedness of both the mental and the physical, hence why we made it like, the main 2 sort of pillars in our program itself. Do you want to add?
You've essentially hit the nail on the head. Yeah. You can tell that we've worked on this for a long time, but it's all based around that holistic approach. We're believers that exercise is just as important.
We come from a big movement background, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like Briggy, you're doing PT work, you've been involved with movement, playing footy, everything for years and years too.
Yeah, exactly.
Notice the difference that plays as well. So
and that 2-hour period seems to be the ideal time to get people to engage with the program side of it and the journal, as well as move their body and enjoy doing that as well.
And during that first hour together, there's essentially 3 main things that we like to cover. There's going to be the weekly focus point, and now this is progressive and it changes week on week. A good example would just be the first week of actually all of our phases is centered around 12-week goal setting. So that journal, essentially phase 1, that'll represent 12 weeks. So the first thing that we do in week 1 is lay out what's our direction, what's our focus over this next 12 weeks. And the fact that we're catching up on a weekly basis, we're getting or being able to provide that accountability on a weekly basis as well. So that's going to be the first part within that hour. The second part is the weekly reflection. I'm a massive fan of that. It's essentially allowing us to see from a macro standpoint what that individual has worked through for the previous week. And the way that we do that is that third part that we go through within that first hour is the daily journaling. So the daily journaling is going to be what we try to encourage the individual to do when we're not with them. So essentially we see them on, let's say, a Wednesday. There's obviously 6 days between that day and when we see them again. So we try to encourage them to build up the habit of journaling through affirmation work, through gratitude work, scheduling, learning to schedule their day and become more organized. There's a daily self-reflection there as well.
And then it's followed up by you guys with when you see them each week, so then you can see exactly how they're progressing
100%,
with their actions.
And that's why we've based our model around the weekly session, because we found that's what's really bringing the best results. The accountability side.
I was going to say that keeps massive accountability, doesn't it? That's awesome. Are you able to dive into, because I know, I'll let you guys touch on this, but I know you've had your original key journal set up. So you originally had the key journal and the exercise one separate. Then you've essentially integrated the both by developing this program, and now you've actually upgraded the journal again this year, right? Can you dive into some of these phases that you're talking about? So you said it's over 4 phases, and each of those phases broken down into 12 weeks, and then that breaks down into the weekly goal setting and so forth. Are you able to break down some of these phases for us and what the kind of the main focus point of all these phases are?
Yeah. So we've got those 4 phases, and they go by the names of implementation, continuation, elevate, and evolve. And essentially think of it as leveling up. So we have our staples in each program. There's 4 staples in each program, and that's goal setting, a daily 5, which is a way to break down those bigger goals. We put that into a tangible practice each day. And then we've got a goals check-in and a 12-week self-reflection that correlates with the goals they set at the start of the journal. So there are 4 staples in each phase. And then we've identified the remaining weeks in the full program and put together progressive self-development topics that we can work through with the client. So
things that become a little bit more advanced in that like 2nd, 3rd, and 4th phase, we don't touch on too much in the first one, because we understand for a lot of the individuals working through it, we want them to be comfortable early on. So it's really about a good example in phase 1, week 4, they're going to work through building a morning routine. So it's these activities that are probably a little bit more achievable versus, say, in phase 3, where we start to dive into even career development and starting to get them to do or take action on areas such as, can they sign up to TAFE? Can they start a course that's going to help them move towards whatever career path they want? Putting things like that into the first phase could be, and we've seen, a bit intimidating and a bit full on, So really find like we want it to be as comfortable as possible. And then as we progress, through to that 4th phase, things become a little bit more advanced. And the ultimate goal is like helping that individual gain independence in their life.
Yeah, 100%.
Because for a lot of them, they're not in that position yet. But we've seen a really good example is that first client we worked with. He's now a support worker for people that were in a situation that he used to be.
Wow.
So that progression, that development, it really does happen. And that's what I was saying. I'm really proud that we took the time that we did to build out the program as we have.
Well, it's paying off massively.
Yeah. And with that progression comes trust. You got to build trust with 100% we're working
100%.
with. So,
that's number one. Hey, we've noticed.
That's what it comes down to.
Well, you build rapport and you build a closer relationship with them, right? Like it's not a transactional relationship. You really build a personal relationship with these people. Yeah. That's amazing too, to see like you're literally building out a plan for these people to be better for a whole year, a whole 12 months. Like they show up to their weekly session like that, which, did you say it's through NDIS? It's funded through NDIS?
Yes.
Yeah. They have the opportunity to show up weekly to do this for a whole year, and then that can continue on as far as they want to.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely incredible. I love it, boys. Trajectory. What's the future plans then? It sounds like you guys are doing really well with it.
Finish producing these other phases.
So we've got phase 2 in manufacturing at the moment, and phase 3 is ready to go to manufacture once we receive phase 2 here in Australia. So, but in terms of where we go to next, Mitchell and I have pretty much filled up our hours that we can commit to the key journal. We have other commitments outside of that as well, and we've built out the team. One of those team members being you.
How's your experience been with?
Mate, it's fantastic.
I love it. I'll let you boys keep going on. We've also taken on Adam, and Jay will join us soon as well. So, and Claire's obviously done some hours for us as well, who's no stranger to this podcast. But we would just want to make more of an impact. And Mitchell and I have put together this program and tried to make it as simple as possible so other people can provide the service as well. And that's our next step, is to obviously take on more clientele through referrals with support coordinators and psychologists, and our current referral partners will continue to refer us more business, I'm sure of that. But provide, I guess, for me, like to provide someone like yourself with the experience that I've had providing this program, that lights me up just as much as I see other people that engage in the program. So
100%. I can speak personally from working alongside you guys now. I've got two or three individuals that I work with under the Key Journal now, it's beyond rewarding. So being a PT for the good part of 5-6 years, naturally you get that socialization. You're helping people achieve their goals, typically like towards some sort of body composition or fitness related goals. To integrate that into all the things that you're helping these individuals with in their life, you can see how much they appreciate it. Like it is quite literally changing someone's life. And it sounds on paper as simple as like just a journal, but it's not. Like the whole program in itself, the impact that it's having on individuals' lives is amazing. You know, I'm getting to the point now working with these individuals, that feeling that I get after a session is so rewarding, and you feel so good about it because you can see how much it means to these people. Like it truly is life-changing. So I love it, boys. Final question before we want to wrap up. You touched on this a bit now, Nick, but what's the ultimate vision? What's the vision in the future for the Key Journal? Where do you want to get it to?
Actually, I had a meeting last week which sort of opened up our horizons a little bit about the potential of what we're doing. You know, seeing people that have been in the space for years really seeing the value in what we're doing. That excited us, obviously, and you know the intention for us is like, I feel like it's broad again, but how can we impact more people? You know, and we're starting to get these awesome runs on the board on the Central Coast. The NDIS system is nationwide, so you know once we feel like we're at the position 2, I think then expanding into that Sydney market, Newcastle, there's no reason we can't set up in Queensland, WA. Like for us, it's making sure that, and especially like the quality of the service is the number one. Yeah, it is the number one. Like, and that comes from us like making sure the people we bring on board are completely on the same page with how we want it run and how we have been doing it up until this point. I think like anything, if quality drops, it's not worth it.
Yeah, it takes away from, because we're ultimately dealing with people's lives. Like we're asking them to open up through the journal and share their experiences with us. Like it's not something to take lightly. We need to ensure that it's right. It's right for us and right for the client.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's something we always make known to both the participant and the coordinator, but you know, we're not counselors, we're not psychologists, and we're not trying to be that. These are all practices and methods that we've used in our personal life that we've then put into this program, which is now working for, you know, quite a wide variety of people that we're working with at the moment. So now our role is to support that individual as best as we can, both within that 2-hour session and then helping them to utilize the journal outside of us. So really trying to impact their whole life.
Awesome, boys. Love it. So when Key Journal's nationwide, you guys heard it here first, right on the podcast. The place is where it happened.
We might move you up to Queensland, huh?
Oh, you know, it's a lot warmer up there than at the moment.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be mad about that. Boys, I love it. I love everything that you guys are doing. I love being a part of it. This being separate from the gym, it's super rewarding, and I'm so excited to see the growth and the potential of where this is going. And I know with how hard you guys work, it's only going to get bigger and better. So all the best of luck to it. You don't need luck because you're going to make it happen, but you guys are doing an amazing job. So
one thing I will throw out there to finish is if you're either a participant or a sport coordinator especially, it's really good to know that we are able to build under both capacity building and core. That'll probably make sense to people in the space. People that aren't in the space, like, what are those 2 areas? But just to clear that up.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out. Like we're 2 normal human beings. We're happy to have a coffee. You're happy to jump on the phone, talk by email.
If people do want to reach out, where do they find you?
Best way would be via email. It'd be info@thekeyjournal.com.
Yep.
And we also have a website where both our numbers are on there as well. So they'd be the best place to find us.
Fantastic, boys. I love it. Nick, thank you very much for joining us, mate.
Thank you.
You're a born natural.
Thanks for having me.
Standard. I love it, boys. We'll catch you on the next episode, Hybrid HQ Podcast.
Cheers, mate.